Hey everyone, welcome back. Um, so we're about 11 days in on the Aquarium, so approaching 2 weeks. As you can see, it's a lot clearer. I've removed most of all of the floating vegetation, left the moss in because that was still growing. Still need to trim some of the dead stuff out, but yeah, most of the floating seagrass and stuff, or watergrass, whatever it was, is now dead. I also did a little bit more research, and it turns out I have too many sticklebacks for the size of my tank. I mean, currently it's okay, and they're fine for now. The problem is on average you're supposed to have about 1 inch of fish per gallon of water. You can get away with a little bit more with stuff like neon tetras, where there is schooling fish with a very low bio load, and they're quite happy with being in schools of about twice the number that they recommend. But with sticklebacks, they've got a fairly average bio load as far as I can tell. And while there are 9 of them in here now, again, there's 3 of them missing. I don't know what happened. What I do know is that I changed the water, and now there's some missing. So clearly, I need to be doing something different so I don't keep having them disappear. So they had a disease for a little bit called white spot or ick, which I was medicating them with. I don't remember if I showed you guys that last week, but so I used this. Ended up having to use it for longer than it said, and that's probably because I caught it late. Normally, you're supposed to start treating them immediately, but unfortunately, as a new aquarium owner, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff, so I didn't necessarily know what was happening to the fish or what I should be doing. I did end up, Googling the symptoms and trying to figure out what was going on. So see this tissue here? It's got a bunch of blue on it. That is actually from cleaning up the stuff from the ick cure. And that is because a lot of the ick cures use stuff, use either a blue or green dye to kill it. So if you are going to use something like that, you just want to make sure you don't have a ton of like plastic stuff in your tank when you use it, because it will, well, unless you're okay with that stuff being blue, because it will dye the stuff blue. Fortunately, all my stuff is either rocks or, plants. Except that I did change out the aeration stone, so it's no longer. See if I can find it. So it's no longer this thing, which was creating a bubble wall, which was just, it was way too much for this tank, and it was splashing and creating all kinds of it was making a mess, and it was cutting off a large portion of the tank where the fish couldn't swim, which isn't really what I'm after. I want them to be able to have plenty of room to roam around. So yeah, they're doing pretty well. They've been really active, seem to be really happy. Some of them have definitely started to show more of their personal behaviors. This guy, he tends to be a little bit more territorial. Big one with a bluish tint over here. So he'll chase the other ones if they get too close. He chases most of them. See if I can find him. This guy right here is pretty close to his size, so that one it actually leaves alone for the most part. It won't chase that one around. And then I have, let's see, that little guy in the back. If that's the right one. Yeah. So that little one in the back, swimming around, hopefully it'll get closer and I can show you. I don't know that the resolution on this thing's good enough to really show you anyway. But these are 3-spine sticklebacks, so they've got 2 spines on the dorsal fin and 1 on the pelvic area. So, or well, 2 spines on the dorsal area and 1 in the pelvic area. That guy, the little one hanging out by the filter, actually only has 2 spines. He's got 1 on his back and 1 on the pelvic fin. I don't know what the reason for that is, but nope, not that one. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. He did come close. Wait, no. And there. So, yeah, he's only got 1 spine on his back. I don't know. He's kind of my favorite. He's very, compared to the others, he's a much brighter green, which I find pretty cool. So one of the cool things about sticklebacks, if you are, actually, let's get into whether or not you're thinking about keeping them, and what you can do to avoid some of the mistakes I made if you do decide to go with these. As far as whether or not I recommend these fish, I do. I would recommend these fish highly. They're very hardy. They'll live in almost any water condition. I mean, you can put they live in salt water, brackish water, fresh water. They do well in all of those. I mean, if you take one out of one kind of environment and put it into a different one, you will have to make sure you get the fish used to, the new water conditions first. As far as temperature goes, they are mostly a cold water fish, but okay, my thermometer thing on the side's not really showing anymore, but the other day it was showing at 78 degrees, and then I had another day where it was 72, so it was going up and down a bit, just because of room temperature and activity and stuff. But that's way warmer than the water I pulled them out of, so clearly they do okay. So, I mean, and the other thing about sticklebacks is, or 3 spines anyway, is they're found in just about every body of water in the northern hemisphere. So, yeah, they're literally everywhere. So if you do decide to get them, they should be pretty easy to find. They're not hard to catch. You can just use one of these little fish nets, usually in a blue or green, at any pet store. I mean, I picked up mine at Walmart for $5. But yeah, they're super easy to catch. They're usually swimming around in schools, though they don't do that as much in smaller environments. So like a fish tank, usually they're gonna swim around in the near vicinity of each other, but they're not gonna, take up. They're not gonna swim around in a school like you would see with something like a tetra. The thing to keep in mind about these is they do get 3 to 4 inches long. So for something like a 10-gallon tank, you're actually looking at probably only about 2. I mean, they are very hardy fish. You might be able to get away with 3 or 4 if you, have an idea what you're doing. Another thing about these, though, is that because of how good they are adapting to new bodies of water, the populations in them are usually fairly morphologically different, so they will actually look different from one body of water to another. So much so that some scientists will actually classify them as different species in every single body of water that they're found in, which again is pretty much everywhere in the northern hemisphere. So if you are watching this from the southern hemisphere, first of all, hello, but really cool for you to join, but also, yeah, sorry, because you're probably not gonna be able to get these. I'm sure there are other native fish you can get, but yeah. So again, very hardy, very easy to take care of. It might take a little bit, but you can feed them just any tetrafish food and bloodworms. That they'll eat pretty much anything that they can put in their mouth. As far as whether or not I would put them in with other fish, I would say probably no. They are carnivorous. They are fin nippers. If you put them in with something bigger than them, quite possibly might get eaten. So wouldn't put them in with like cichlids or anything like that. You might be able to get away with putting them in with stuff like tetras. But the things to keep in mind about that is these are sight predators, and tetras are very shiny. So, yeah, they're. And compared to the overall size that these will get to, I mean, if you get them small and they're raised in the same tank, they may not think of it as a food source, but I mean, when they get to 4 inches long and the other one's only an inch long, it might kill it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know, other than like snails, what would make good tank mates. Do recommend snails. If you put shrimp in there, they're probably gonna get harassed and or eaten. So, for the most part, just kind of a by itself fish. Now, unlike other fish that you can get in your tank, like goldfish, they're not gonna live 20 years. They're not even like betta fish where they live like, 5 or 6 years. These, on average, live 3 or 4 years. Or maybe it's 2 to 3. It's not a super long time, so they can live up to about 3 years. And they get 3 to 4 inches long in that time. They can breed in your tank if you get the conditions right and you've got a lot of you have a lot of substrate for them to dig out, because they do nest and they protect their fry. So it is possible to get them to mate, but they are also cannibalistic. So keeping them alive, or keeping the fry alive after they mate, may be difficult unless you have a way to, or somewhere you can pull out the fish and place them somewhere else. So, yeah, but I would recommend them, mostly because they're, they're really easy to take care of. They're fun to watch, and if you if you get them from multiple different bodies of water, you could potentially, just get very different looking ones. Well, or at least fairly different looking ones. I mean, quite a few of these look fairly different just from the same lake. Like those two. Now you have some of his aggressive behavior where he's just chasing the other ones because they came into his proximity. And because he's bigger. You can just get away with that. So yeah, anyway, that's the 1 week update. If you'd, well, actually, let's see, I can show you guys this. This is my Ecosphere jar. I believe I showed you it last week. There are currently 3 different species of snails. All except one. I've noticed that there are multiple. Oops, sorry. There are multiple snails of each type. So, I'm not super well versed in snail species. So, as you can see, that one right there on the glass in the front, and the one on the to the right of it, right there, are the same species. This one right here in the front, and the one in the back right there, well, actually the 2 in the back right there are all the same species. And then as far as other things living in here, it's mostly tube effects, which are those little wiggly worm things. And there were, I did only see like 2 or 3, but now there's like probably a dozen or so. So I think it's safe to say that they're breeding, which is really cool. Hopefully get stable populations of these things. If you think about an ecosphere, I would recommend that even more than the fish. Basically, with an ecosphere, you just want to put in substrate from a body of water, put in things like mosses, plants, try to plant them. The goal and the healthiest way that they'll live is with an active plant base. If you get a thriving plant base, it'll help considerably. You don't want anything too complex in there. Basically, you can put crustaceans, or if you see crustaceans, you can put those in. Leeches will eventually die off. In my experience, clams usually die off. I had little pea clams in there, which weren't much bigger. Actually, they're probably smaller than a couple of these snails. But yeah, just mostly you're not even looking for the specific aquatic animals. What you're looking for is substrate and the water. You just put those in directly from the lake, and then you seal it, and you don't open it, and you will have marine life in there. It's just, well, maybe marine's the wrong word. I think that's for ocean. But you will have aquatic life, pretty much guaranteed. I've yet to see a body of water that didn't have aquatic life of some sort. So, I mean, even if it's just microorganisms and it ends up looking like basically sea monkeys roaming around, you'll still have stuff. But these are very cool. They're, I can't say zero maintenance. They're almost zero maintenance. You will need something like just, I mean, it could be like a fluorescent desk lamp. That's what I'm using to keep them alive. But they need a decent light source. If you've got a place with consistent sunlight, unlike Alaska where I live, then you can probably put them, I wouldn't say in a windowsill, but like window adjacent, or you can put them in a windowsill on a side of the house that doesn't like face where the sun comes up and goes down. Because indirect sunlight's probably the best, but again, fluorescent lights work. You just need something that's going to keep the plants alive and stimulate the algae growth. The other thing you need to make sure you do is keep about an inch of water, or not an inch of water, an inch of air up at the top. It's very important for the oxygen exchange to take place, because otherwise your oxygen is going to disappear from the water, and then everything will suffocate and die. So this is the terrarium one. I probably put a little bit too much water in it, and the result was I flooded out all of the little animals in there. I had a centipede, there were a bunch of worms, and they seem to have all died. So we'll see how long this lasts. Normally, I think you need that kind of stuff for like a healthy, sustained plant environment. But right now, the plants are liking, the moist environment and a lot of light. So they're growing. But basically, this has just turned into a sealed plant jar, which is not what I was hoping for. But live and learn. So anyway, thanks for joining. Oh, wait. Right. One more thing about the sticklebacks. I did mention the, if you're wanting to keep them as pets, what you should do. Basically, oxygen, filter. I would put plants in, and I would get substrate from the lake. That's actually what I did. Mosses are best. You don't have to get the plants from the lake, but if you do, that's a great way to get snails. They usually hitch a ride. But yeah, substrate from whatever lake, pond, wherever you got them from. And that's just to help with bacteria and algae growth, because that will also come in with it and keep things healthy. Keep in mind that if you do get wild fish, the likelihood of parasites is decently high. So be prepared to buy something like the ick medication, because that seems to be a fairly common one. But yeah, just basically biggest thing is just pay attention to your fish, check on how they look. And if they start looking different, you're going to need to make some changes. And figure out what the problem is. Anything else? Regular food, oxygen, filter, bacteria, dechlorinate your water, very important. If you're on well water, you're probably okay, but city water's not good. I would still probably use water treatment stuff, even on well water. But, yeah, okay, I think that's it. You all have a great day. Stay safe out there. Love you, bye.